entirety of the 11th chapter of John's Gospel. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus, "Lord, he whom you love is ill." But when Jesus heard the message, he said, "This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now trying to stone you, and are you going there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk during the day do not stumble because they see the light of this world. But those who walk at night stumble because the light is not in them." And after saying this, he told them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right." Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death, but they thought that he was referring merely to sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Thomas, who was called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house consoling her saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how much he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, the stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When Jesus had said this, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and seen what Jesus did, believed in him. Grace and peace to you all in the name of our still speaking God, who loves us just the way that we are, and who loves us too much to let us stay that way. Will you pray with me? May these words of my mouth and may the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O God, for you alone are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Allow me to set the scene. Death keeps watch in the home of Mary and Martha. Mary and Martha are losing hope. Their brother Lazarus has gone from bad to worse. His skin is cold to the touch, but still he sweats. His cough has stopped, only to be replaced by a rattling noise that accompanies each fateful breath. Lazarus' eyes are open, but he doesn't seem to see their faces right in front of him. In the last few days, Mary and Martha have learned what it means to feel powerless. They've tried to get their brother to eat something, to drink something. They've given him every medicine that the doctors have prescribed. They've kept him covered in blankets, trying to keep him warm, but all of their work and all of their tears have made no difference. It's becoming clear to them. They are beginning to accept now that their brother is dying. In desperation, the sisters send a message to Jesus. Lord is the name by which they address him. Lord, the one whom you love is sick. Lazarus, the man who you love, the man that we love, he is dying. We're scared and we're helpless. There is nothing more that we can do for him. We need you, Lord. Please come to us. Their message is designed to be intimate. Don't forget us, right? That's really what they are saying to Jesus. Don't forget us. Remember our relationship. Remember that you love us. Remember that you have been a guest in our home. Remember how much you love our brother. We are your friends, Lord. You have eaten at our table and you have stayed in our home. Please remember us and help us. But Jesus doesn't go. At least not with the sense of urgency that Martha and Mary are hoping for. After receiving their summons, Jesus waits 2 more days before he and his disciples set out. And while Jesus delays, Lazarus dies. One by one, his organs shut down. His labored breathing becomes too difficult for his failing body to maintain. Finally, his breath stops. Mary and Martha's brother passes beyond their reach. They hold his lifeless body. They hold each other and they weep. And then, when they are finally able to collect themselves, Mary and Martha perform a final act of love for their brother as they clean his now lifeless body, prepare it for burial. A funeral is held for Lazarus, and still Jesus doesn't come. He wasn't even there for the funeral. When Jesus finally does arrive, Lazarus is already 4 days in the tomb. Martha gets word that Jesus has finally arrived, that he is on the outskirts of town, and she goes out to meet him. But her sister Mary stays home. The roles of Martha as the domestic and Mary as the disciple, by which they are first introduced to us, are now suddenly reversed. Mary just isn't ready yet to kneel at the footstep, at the feet of Jesus. She is still too hurt, because in her hour of need, she called on him, and he did not come. Martha, who does go out to meet Jesus, she is feeling the same thing. She sees Jesus, and the first thing that she says to him, the very first words out of Martha's mouth are, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Don't you realize that you're too late? Where were you when we needed you? We asked for your help, and you left us to fend for ourselves. What do you hope to accomplish by coming here now? He's gone. The funeral is over. It's too late. Where were you when we needed you? Later, when Mary is finally ready to come and see Jesus, she says those very same words that Martha said. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." But you weren't here. And those who have gathered to mourn with Mary and Martha, they agree with her. Surely, they say, if Jesus could heal a man who had been born blind, then certainly he could have healed Lazarus as well. But he didn't. Where was he when they needed him? That's the question that all of Lazarus' friends and family are asking. Where was Jesus when we needed him? In the midst of our grief, in the midst of their grief, the only thing that Mary and Martha managed to express is their frustration with Jesus that he was not there when they needed him. But, sisters and brothers, what Mary and Martha, in the midst of their grief, were not yet able to see, what they had not yet come to realize was this, that when Lazarus was sick and when Lazarus was dying, and they first sent that message to Jesus, that is not when they really needed Jesus. That is not when they really needed Jesus. Because when Lazarus was sick, even as his sickness was getting worse and it became clear that he was dying, there was still so much that Mary and Martha were capable of doing for their brother. They might have felt powerless, but they were not powerless. There was still so much that they could do for their brother. They could give him something to relieve his pain. They could place a wet cloth on his forehead to keep him comfortable. When it reached the point that he was only able to breathe through his mouth, they could wet a sponge and swab the inside of his mouth in order to keep it moist. In those rare moments when Lazarus' eyes would fall upon their faces and it became clear by the expression on his face that he recognized him, they could smile back at him and let him know that they were there. They could hold his hand and tell him that he was not alone and that he was beloved. They could be with him. They could pray with him. they could in all of these ways and more express how much they loved him. And Mary and Martha, they did all of that and more for their brother Lazarus as he lay there sick and dying. As a family, they embarked together on a journey to the end of life. As a family, they walked through the valley of death's shadow with their brother, hand in hand, as far as they could go. There was so much that they could and did do for Lazarus. But their companionship with him in the face of death, it ended the moment that Lazarus died. At the moment that he died, at that point, there was absolutely nothing more that they could do for him. It was in that moment, in the moment of Lazarus' death, that Mary and Martha went from merely feeling powerless to truly being powerless. Because as mere mortals, Mary and Martha, they have no power over death. Yes? Sisters and brothers, in the great cosmic scorecard, death's record against mortals is perfect. 100 billion wins and 0 losses. Human beings cannot overcome death. It is beyond us. No matter how much we fear it and no matter how much we try to avoid it, death gets us all in the end, and there is absolutely nothing that you and I can do about it. Our struggle against death is futile. In the face of death, all human agency fails. And then, only the one who is the resurrection and the life has any power. That is when Mary and Martha really needed Jesus. Jesus did not come at the time that Mary and Martha thought was right, but he came to them when all hope was gone and this story's ending seemed to be fixed and final. Lazarus is gone. The spirit has gone out of him. The breath has gone out of him. A stone covers his tomb. He is dead, and death is forever. Sisters and brothers, death is forever until Jesus shows up. Amen? Amen. Death is forever until Jesus shows up. Jesus commands that the stone be rolled away from the tomb, and in a voice so loud and so clear that it reaches our ears today, Jesus says to that dead man, "Rise up and come out of that tomb." And at the sound of Jesus' voice, death itself departs. When he who is the resurrection and the life arrives on scene, death takes off. It flees before him. And the dead man, still wrapped and bound in his burial shroud, emerges from the tomb, and Jesus commands, "Unbind him and set him free." And the trappings of death are removed from his body, and the sun warms Lazarus' skin again for the first time in days. Lazarus breathes in the breath, breathes deep, and breathes out again. Jesus said to Mary and to Martha and to the crowd that was gathered around them and to us today, "I am the resurrection and the life." In Jesus Christ, death is swallowed up in victory. Because, sisters and brothers, some years later, Mary and Martha and Lazarus, they would all eventually die for good. You can't run into Lazarus on the street today. Some years later, Mary and Martha and Lazarus, they all eventually died and faded into history, as one day each one of us will. But for them, the sting of death had been taken away forever because they knew that death does not get the last word. Because neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation, not anything in creation, not even death, will be able to separate us from the love of God in Jesus Christ our Lord. And when the tomb is sealed, and when the smell of death hangs heavy in the air, it is in that moment that we once again hear the voice, the promise of Jesus. Rise up from that tomb and come out. Cast off the shroud of death and be set free. Amen.